March 27, 1981. Johnny Carson was halfway through his monologue when a producer handed him an envelope marked urgent. Inside was a letter from a terminally ill child, a message that would pause the show and create one of the most emotional moments in television history. That Friday evening, The Tonight Show was running as usual. Johnny was delivering jokes about President Reagan's latest economic address, and the audience was responding with the laughter and warmth that had made the program America's top late-night show. It was expected to be just another smooth episode in Carson's nearly 20-year career. But 7 minutes into the monologue, something extraordinary occurred. Fred DeCordova, the show's director, walked onto the stage during the live broadcast, something he had never done before. In his hand was a white envelope labeled, "Urgent for Johnny Carson," written in a child's handwriting. Johnny stopped speaking mid-sentence, realizing something serious was happening. The studio audience grew silent, unsure what to make of the interruption. "Johnny," Fred said quietly, though his voice carried through the microphone. "This just arrived at the studio gate. Security thought you should see it right away." Johnny took the envelope, and as he glanced at the return address, his expression shifted. It read, "Timothy Hudson, age 8, Children's Hospital, Los Angeles." "Ladies and gentlemen," Johnny said, turning toward the cameras and the crowd, "I'm sorry for the interruption, but something important just came in. Do you mind if I take a moment to read this?" The audience murmured their approval as Johnny carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in the shaky handwriting of a young child, some words clearly guided by an adult. Yet the message was unmistakably genuine. Johnny began reading silently, but as he continued, his hand started to tremble. The audience watched as the always composed host visibly fought to keep his emotions in check. "I think I should read this aloud," Johnny finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's from a little boy named Timothy Hudson, writing from Children's Hospital." Johnny took a deep breath and began reading. "Dear Mr. Carson, my name is Timothy, and I am 8 years old. I have leukemia, and the doctors say I don't have much time left, maybe only a few weeks. I watch your show every night with my mom and dad, even though it's past my bedtime, because it makes us laugh and helps us forget about the hospital for a while. I wanted to write to you because you make so many people happy every night, and I wanted to thank you before I have to go to heaven. My mom says heaven is beautiful, but I'm still a bit scared since I've never been there before. I have one wish before I leave. I want to make people laugh the way you do. I'd like to tell one joke on your show so that, when I'm gone, people will remember that Timothy Hudson made them smile at least once. I know you're very busy and probably receive lots of letters, so I understand if you can't do this. But my dad always says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Thank you for making my family happy during such a difficult time. Your friend, Timothy Hudson. P.S. I'm really good at knock-knock jokes." By the time Johnny finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. The audience sat quietly, overcome with emotion, and several crew members were visibly crying. Ed McMahon had tears running down his face. Johnny gently folded the letter and looked straight into the camera. When he spoke, his voice was unsteady. "Timothy," Johnny said, "if you're watching right now with your mom and dad, I want you to know something. You don't have to wait to make people laugh, you already have. And I promise you're absolutely going to be on this show." He turned toward Fred DeCordova. "Fred, can we get Children's Hospital on the phone right now?" Within 3 minutes, as the show went to an unplanned commercial break, the production team contacted the hospital and connected to Timothy's room. When the program returned, Johnny was holding a telephone. "Timothy," he said softly, "this is Johnny Carson. Can you hear me?" Through the speakers, the audience heard a small, weak voice answer. "Really? Is this actually Mr. Carson?" "It's really me, buddy," Johnny replied, smiling through tears. "I just read your letter on my show and I have a question for you. Are you ready to tell America your best knock-knock joke right now?" Timothy sounded amazed and a little nervous. "On TV, right now?" "That's right," Johnny said. "About 20 million people are waiting to hear Timothy Hudson's joke. Are you ready?" There was a brief pause before Timothy's voice came through, stronger this time. "Okay, I'm ready." "All right, Timothy," Johnny said, sitting back in his chair with the phone to his ear. The microphone picked up both sides of the call. "Knock, knock," Timothy said. "Who's there?" Johnny replied, smiling. "Interrupting cow. Interrupting cow. Moo!" Timothy shouted, cutting Johnny off mid-sentence and exactly how the joke should go. The sound of his laughter, bright and innocent, filled the studio, breaking through the sadness in the room. Johnny Carson laughed, genuinely laughed, and so did the entire audience. It wasn't out of sympathy or politeness. It was real laughter, the kind only a child's pure humor could inspire. "That's a great joke," Johnny said, still smiling. "Timothy, you just made 20 million people laugh. How does that feel?" "It feels good," Timothy said. "Really good. Thank you, Mr. Carson." "Nobody, thank you," Johnny replied warmly. "Now I want you to listen to something." Johnny gave a small signal to the audience and they began to applaud. It wasn't the usual lively Tonight Show applause. It was slower, deeper, filled with emotion. Soon, everyone stood, giving 8-year-old Timothy Hudson a standing ovation he could hear through the phone. "Timothy," Johnny said when the applause faded, "I want to make you a promise. Your joke is going to be remembered. But more importantly, I'd like to do something to help other kids like you. Would that be okay?" "What do you want to do?" Timothy asked quietly. "I want to make sure children in hospitals have things that make them laugh and feel happy," Johnny explained. "And I'm going to name the program after you, the Timothy Hudson Fund for Children's Hospital Entertainment. Every child who's sick and afraid should get the chance to laugh and feel joy, just like you made us feel tonight." "That would be really cool," Timothy said, his voice tired but cheerful. "You rest now, okay?" Johnny said softly. "And Timothy, you did great. You're a natural performer. Bye, Mr. Carson. Thank you for letting me be on your show." "Goodbye, Timothy," Johnny said gently. "Thank you for being brave enough to write to me." After the call ended, Johnny sat at his desk in silence for a long moment, collecting himself. The studio audience stayed completely quiet, waiting for him to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," Johnny finally said, "I started tonight thinking we'd do our usual show. A few jokes, some guests, and some laughs. But sometimes life reminds us what really matters, what's really important. That little boy has only a few weeks left to live, yet instead of being angry or bitter, he chose to use his time to bring joy to others." Johnny took out his handkerchief and wiped his eyes, making no attempt to hide his emotions. "I've been hosting this show for nearly 20 years, he said, "and I've had the honor of meeting some of the most talented people in the world. But I don't think I've ever met anyone braver or more selfless than Timothy Hudson." The public's reaction to Timothy's moment on The Tonight Show was immediate and powerful. By the time the episode ended, NBC's switchboard had received over 10,000 calls from viewers asking how they could help Timothy and other children like him. Within 24 hours, donations to Children's Hospital Los Angeles had surpassed $50,000. By the end of the week, that number had risen to more than 300,000. Letters, toys, and gifts poured in from across the country, all addressed to Timothy Hudson at the hospital. The outpouring of support was so large that extra staff were needed just to handle it. But more meaningful than the money or gifts was the love people sent. Thousands of letters arrived, each one telling Timothy how brave he was, how his joke made them laugh, and how his strength had inspired them. Timothy Hudson lived for 3 more weeks after his appearance on The Tonight Show. During that time, he received visitors from all over the country, comedians who came to share jokes, actors who wanted to meet their young fan, and ordinary people who simply wanted to thank him for reminding them what true courage looked like. Johnny Carson visited Timothy twice during those final weeks, bringing stories, laughter, and spending quiet time with him and his family. On one of those visits Johnny received a drawing from Timothy, a picture of the two of them standing together on the Tonight Show stage. At the bottom, Timothy had written, "Thank you for making my dream come true." Johnny kept that drawing in his NBC office for the rest of his career, and later, it hung in his home until his passing in 2005. When Timothy Hudson passed away on April 18, 1981, just 3 weeks after his Tonight Show appearance, hundreds of people attended his funeral. Many had never met him in person, but they had been deeply moved by his courage and positivity. True to his word, Johnny Carson created the Timothy Hudson Fund, a program dedicated to bringing entertainment, toys, and comfort to hospitalized children across the nation. The fund began with Johnny's own large donation and continued to grow through contributions from viewers who were touched by Timothy's story. Over the following decades, the Timothy Hudson Fund helped millions of children find moments of happiness during their most difficult days. It provided televisions, video games, books, art supplies, and arranged visits from entertainers to hospitals across the country. In 2006, 1 year after Johnny Carson's death, his estate donated Timothy's drawing to the Smithsonian Institution. It became part of a special collection, highlighting defining moments in television history. Alongside the drawing was Timothy's original letter to the Tonight Show. Museum curators later shared that more visitors stopped to read Timothy's letter and see his artwork than almost any other item in the television exhibit. Parents would often bring their children to see it, explaining that sometimes the smallest voices make the biggest difference. Timothy Hudson's appearance on The Tonight Show became a defining moment in how America viewed childhood, illness, and the power of media to bring hope to children in need. The idea of providing laughter and entertainment to hospitalized kids, something we now take for granted, was still new in 1981. Inspired by Timothy's story, children's hospitals nationwide began developing programs that brought play, creativity, and a sense of normalcy into treatment settings. Professionals in the emerging field of child life care credit Timothy's televised moment as a major influence on public understanding of how play and laughter support pediatric healing. In a 1989 interview, Johnny Carson was asked to name the most memorable moment of his Tonight Show career. Without hesitation, he mentioned Timothy Hudson. "I've interviewed presidents, movie stars, and some of the most talented people in the world," Johnny said. "But an 8-year-old boy with a knock-knock joke taught me more about courage and generosity than all of them combined." Timothy was dying, yet instead of thinking about himself, he wanted to make others laugh. That's true grace. When the interviewer asked if he had any regrets about that night, Johnny shook his head. "My only regret is that I didn't get to know him longer, but I'm grateful I got to be part of his story, even if only for those few minutes." Today, when people recall the most meaningful moments in The Tonight Show's history, Timothy Hudson's letter is always mentioned. It marks a time when television went beyond entertainment and became a bridge between one child's wish and millions of hearts. The knock-knock joke Timothy told that night has been retold countless times since, often alongside his story, the story of an 8-year-old boy who simply wanted to make people smile. And every time that joke is shared, Timothy's spirit lives on, not as a patient, but as a young comedian who understood that laughter is one of the greatest gifts we can give. Johnny Carson paused The Tonight Show that evening, not because something went wrong, but because something deeply right was happening. A child wanted to be heard, and Johnny made sure the entire country was listening. If this story of kindness and courage inspired you, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Share this video with someone who needs to know that even the smallest voices can have the greatest impact. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply ask for what we believe in.